In this video, you will learn about viewports and how they relate to the implementation of the Spark scroller component to add scroll bars to your application. You can think of a viewport as a window through which you can view content that is otherwise concealed. Any class that implements the iViewport interface can act as a viewport. The group container and its subclasses vgroup and hgroup can function as viewports. The left side of this schematic illustrates some employee content and a possible viewport in gray for that content. The left side of this schematic shows the implemented viewport with a vertical scroll bar. You may have noticed that the Spark containers are not automatically scrollable. You must use the Spark scroller component to display horizontal and/or vertical scroll bars. The component will determine which scroll bars are necessary based on the size of the viewport and the content being viewed. You add the scroller component to your containers by wrapping them in the tag. Be careful that you put the size constraints on the scroller itself, not the viewport container. It will work if you put the constraints on the viewport container, but it is a recommended best practice to leave them on the scroller. If you are working with skinnable containers, you must define their scroll bars in their skins. You will learn how to do that in day 5. Here's the application that I showed you in the last video. I have some header text and then a number of employees listed in a tile layout. I want to make the lists display smaller so I can add a scroll bar. So back in the code, I'm adding the height and width properties to the border container with values of 260 and 500 pixels respectively. When I save the file and run the application, you can see that the border changed, but it did not constrain the display of the employees. I'm adding a scroller tag block around the border container instance. When I save the file, you will see a compiler error. Remember that the border container class is a skinnable container, which means that you should add scroll bars in its skin. You will learn about skinning in later videos. For now, I will add a group container inside of the border container class, and then move the scroller tag block around it. I'm also moving the height and width properties from the border container to the group container. Note that it is considered a best practice to put the width and height properties on the scroller rather than the group container. However, in this case, doing so does not give me the desired results. Now let me do a little code cleanup. This series follows a coding methodology that involves indenting nested tag blocks. So I am highlighting the entire group container and pressing the Tab key on my keyboard to indent it. I'm also fixing the rest of the code. When I save the file and run the application, you can see that the group container is scrollable, but the border is around everything, including the scroll bar. Back in the border container class, I am adding a width property with a value of 500. Now when I save the file and run the application, you can see that the border hugs the group container and is inside the scroll bar. You can also define a scroller component's viewport using the viewport property of the scroller tag. In this code, I have defined an ID property for the group block and bound it to the viewport property of the scroller tag. Back in my code, I am removing the scroller block from around the group container and then highlighting the group container and pressing Shift-Tab to undent it. Next, I'm giving the group container an ID property with a value of employee group. Now I'm adding a scroller instance between the closing group and border container tags and adding a viewport property binding it to the value of the group container's ID property, employee group. When I save the file and run the application, you can see that it looks the same as before. For your next step, work through the exercise titled Experimenting with Container Layouts.